I left for work that morning with a perfectly normal yard. Trimmed grass, clean fence line, nothing out of place. When I came home, the sound hit me first. Gravel crunching, an engine roaring. An excavator was tearing straight across my lawn while my neighbor stood nearby, arms crossed. Watching like this was completely normal. For a few seconds, I genuinely thought I was misunderstanding what I was seeing. Maybe they were repairing something near the road. Maybe this was some kind of mistake. Then I saw the fresh trench cutting diagonally through my property, not near the edge, not close to the boundary, but clearly, undeniably on my land. I walked closer, trying to process it, and that's when my neighbor looked at me, completely calm, and said, "Oh good, you're home. We're just putting the driveway in." And in that moment, I realized he had just made the most expensive mistake of his life. I've lived in this house for almost 12 years. It's a quiet neighborhood, the kind where people wave, but mostly keep to themselves. The lot next to mine sat empty for years until about 6 months ago, when it finally sold. The new owner introduced himself the first week. Friendly enough. Confident. Maybe a little too confident. During one of our early conversations, he mentioned how steep his lot was, and joked that getting a proper driveway in would be a creative challenge. He even asked casually where exactly I thought the property line ran. I remember shrugging and saying the survey markers were still in place from when I bought the house. He smiled and said, "Good to know." At the time, I didn't think much of it. That was mistake number one. Bike in my yard, I asked the machine operator what was going on. He wiped his hands on his jeans and said, "We're installing the driveway access. Your neighbor approved everything." "I didn't," I said. That's when my neighbor stepped forward.com/relaxed. Like I was the one overreacting. "It's only a few feet," he said. "It won't affect you. This is the most practical way to bring the driveway up the hill." A few feet? The trench was cutting a wide curve through my lawn. Gravel was already being dumped. My sprinkler line had been ripped apart. "You're on my property," I said. He actually laughed. "No, I'm not. The line's further over." My heart was pounding, but I didn't scream. I didn't argue. Instead, I told the contractor to pause work immediately and walked back inside. That's when I made one phone call. The next morning, I hired a licensed surveyor. If there was even a chance, I was wrong. I wanted proof. Meanwhile, despite me telling him there was a dispute, my neighbor resumed work. More gravel. More grading. 3 days later, the survey results came back. Not only was the driveway over the line, it was nearly 9 feet onto my property at its widest point. 9 feet. And the curve of it meant a significant portion of his access road permanently cut through my land. I walked the surveyor's flags myself. Bright orange markers made it painfully clear. The driveway sliced right through them. When I showed him the report, he barely glanced at it. "That survey must be wrong," he said. "You're blowing this out of proportion." Blowing it out of proportion. If someone slipped on that driveway, I could be liable. If I sold my house, that encroachment would become my legal problem. He thought I would give up. That was mistake number 2. I scheduled a consultation with a property attorney that same week. I brought photos, the survey, and timestamps of the construction. The lawyer didn't even hesitate. "This is clear encroachment," she said, "and the longer it stays, the more complicated it becomes." She drafted a cease and desist letter demanding immediate removal of the portion built on my land. It was delivered by certified mail. Construction stopped the next day, but instead of apologizing, my neighbor showed up at my door furious. "You're seriously doing this?" he snapped. "You're going to delay my entire project over a few feet." I told him calmly that he had built on my property without permission. There wasn't a few feet. That was trespassing and property damage. He threatened to sue me for interfering with his build. I simply told him I'd see him in court. A week later, something interesting happened. The city inspector showed up. Apparently, the driveway permit he had filed didn't match the actual construction footprint. The inspector measured, compared documents, then posted a bright, orange stopwork notice directly on the half-finished driveway. I won't lie. Seeing that notice felt incredibly satisfying. After a month of stalled construction, legal fees piling up, and pressure from his contractor, he finally requested mediation. He had 2 options. Remove the entire section crossing my property and redesign the driveway, or negotiate a legal easement and compensate me accordingly. Removing it would have meant tearing up everything and starting over at a far steeper grade. Expensive. Very expensive. So we negotiated. By the time it was over, he had paid a substantial sum for a formal, recorded easement, enough to cover my legal fees, landscaping repairs, and tensomme. He also had to install proper drainage to prevent runoff onto my yard. All of it documented, notarized, and filed with the county. Watching him sign that check was surreal. All of this could have been avoided with one simple conversation before construction started. Now the driveway exists, but legally, properly, and at a cost he definitely didn't anticipate. He doesn't wave anymore. Doesn't make small talk. Avoids eye contact completely. And honestly, that's fine with me. Because the lesson here isn't about revenge. It's about boundaries. Literal ones. You don't get to redraw them because it's convenient. You don't get to bulldoze first and apologize later. So, tell me honestly, if you came home and found an excavator carving through your yard, would you try to handle it calmly like I did? Or would you have lost it on the spot?